Welcome to Work It Out with TeKay Brown Taylor. She's an HR powerhouse and certified mediator in the CSRA. Conflict is everywhere, in our homes, our day-to-day transactions, and especially in the workplace, where good HR processes and policies can fall short. Save time, save money. Don't rush to litigate, mediate. Visit brownsstonemediation.com. Now here's TeKay and Neil.
TeKay, we're on the stretch run of our David Letterman top 10 mistakes that HR managers are making, and number 8 is a biggie because you're a big believer in setting the course right away with the job description, but you've seen some poor ones through your day. What ones do you feel are the most problematic, I guess? What are they missing?
Well, they're missing that cultural side, that job fit side of whether that employee will fit into your organization beyond just knowing how to do the job. And so the job description will say what the tasks are. Landscaping.
Sure.
I need you to know how to work a weed eater. I need you to know how to line the grass. I need you to know how. Okay, those are all job qualifications, tasks. But what about being a team player? What about communicating effectively? What about accountability? What about, all those different soft skills that also come with a person being a great fit for a job is being able to follow direction. Those things are important. Being able to, and you won't have this in your job description, but there's ways to put it in your job description to understand that individual respects leadership or just respect in general. That's a big issue right now because there's a lot of uncivility in the workplace.
That's true.
And so it's really important that we're looking at the whole person and not just the job. Do they fit? Are they qualified for the job?
To use your example of landscaping, do you think there's a way to weed out different potential employees if some things are in the job description that they just, maybe they're real quiet and they're not comfortable in a team environment?
Yes, and that's where we use behavioral questions. Give me an example when. How would you handle if? So all those things and how that particular candidate responds will help you determine. And there's other ways. There's assessments. There's personality tests. There's a number of ways. And so depending on the organization's time, resources, what they do and what we're trying to get out of that particular interview process and who needs to be involved in the interview process, we can determine all those different things to help us weed, if you will, weed out to the best candidate. So yes, it's a process, but it needs to be thoughtful. You need to be thoughtful in the beginning.
I have started to notice that salaries or salary ranges are appearing in job descriptions. When you sit down with an outsourced client that you're going to help with, is that something you work with them on? Is that important?
Well, there's a lot of conversation around pay transparency. It's a big debate. It's going back and forth now. So it's really organization's call, meaning to determine if it helps their competitiveness. Because the reality is there's this perceived notion around we being in a war on talent. It's hard to find good talent right now. And certainly another conversation, my personal philosophy and professional philosophy on why there's this perception around the war on talent, because I just don't believe that people aren't available or don't want to work, but that's neither here or there. But going back to the pay transparency, it's a discussion, determine if having the salary range on there will put you in a position to be in a more competitive for the best talent, because you're trying to acquire this person. And right now, the employee candidates, it's a candidate's world. They get to negotiate It used to be where we as employers determine what we're looking for and how we're looking for it. But now the candidates get to come in and say, well, if you want me to come work for you, this is what I want and this is what I need. And they have choices and they can negotiate. And so if having a salary on there puts you as the employer in a stronger position to compete for that talent, then I think it's worth doing. It's a consideration, and certainly it's becoming more normalized and more. It used to be taboo to talk salary. Now people are talking salary.
Yeah.
And so we're just in a space where there's a lot of conversation around pay transparency.
I'm wondering what the sweet spot is in terms of a job description. We've all seen really robust ones that are very, very specific. And then, of course, there's ones that are very short. Where do you land?
I don't think the length is important. What's in it is important. And we've talked a lot about how one of the issues that I find most is that it's so focused on the job that it misses, and we get the person who is a rock star in doing the job, but they are horrible to work with. And so now this person, you're spending a lot of time and energy trying to manage this person up or manage them out. And if we started off right with the job description and really helping us ensure that we're getting the right talent in the door, then it saves us a lot of time and money from the onset.
Does the job description have any impact on making the case that somebody is not a right fit down the road? Meaning, how important is it to cover the bases in a job description about what your expectations are?
Well, I gave you the example earlier that a client hired an employee, and it's somewhere in that hiring process and them coming on to the organization that it became fuzzy on what the job description is, or what the employee understood their job description was, and the employer changing the job description based on that particular employee saying, well, wait a minute, I didn't realize this was the job. This is what I want to do. And now the employee wanting to keep that employee was open to modifying and almost begrudgingly open to modifying it, but did modify the person's job. And so that's important to start with a good job description and make sure that candidates and employees understand what their job description is. How can I meet the expectation if we are fuzzy on what the job is?
Good point. And coming up, mistake number 9, retaining your employees. They're going out the door faster than you would like. There's some key issues and mistakes being made, and we'll address that on the other side of the break.
All right.
You're listening to Work It Out with TeKay Brown Taylor from Brownstone Mediation Services. Family, business, your workplace. What is conflict costing you? Visit brownstonemediation.com to see how you can find a resolution and maybe even a reconciliation of a broken relationship. That's brownstonemediation.com.
Mistake number 9 is poor retention levels with TeKay. Neil, do you have a goal in mind as a hiring manager as how long you would like to have somebody be with your company? I mean, would you like to give them a gold watch after 25 years, or what's the goal, first of all?
Well, that's different for every employee, but what I would say in terms of retention, well, not even retention, because my immediate thought is leading into that retention question is that I find is a issue for employers, or when you have someone, or even if you're looking for good talent, because we just talked about talent, right? Is that we see on a resume where we want, or on a job, a person's employment or previous employment paperwork that they have hopped around. And we used to believe and want and desire to see a person that's been with somewhere 5, 10, 15 years. That's not the case anymore. It's becoming normal for a person to stay with a company a year, 2 years, 3 years, and they're on to the next thing. Because right now, that's so important for individuals. They're looking for how do they progress? How do they grow? How do they promote with an organization? What can they take from the organization, if you will? And so I don't think there is a one size fits all or how long a person stay to determine if they're a good employee or if they add value with the company. Someone can come into your organization in 3 years and they help grow your organization tremendously and just as well as someone that, was with you for 15 years. How fast paced we are as organizations now. You there a year and you feel like you've been there 5.
Do you ever have employers share with you that they feel like there's maybe a problem because people are just leaving a lot and it's constant turnover? Talk about turnover as a issue.
Oh yes, that is a serious issue. Is not being able to get people and not being able to keep people. And there's a lot that can be said to why an organization can't keep people. I am a firm believer is that people leave people. People don't leave jobs. Of course, there's some circumstances where you have an employee who needs more money. They're growing their family. Wife is pregnant, and or wife has to relocate because she's going back to school or got a new job, something like that. So there are circumstances in a person's life that require them to make employment changes. But Neil, I tell you, probably 70-80% of retention is connected to the workspace, the workplace, and the workplace issues, the human relations, which is why we do so much work in the space that we're in. People leave people.
Have you ever had to have a hard conversation with an employer about that? That's got to be tough.
That's all we do. And that's why we're such a resource. That's the gift that we bring as HR and specifically human relations specialists. We specialize in conflict, and conflict not being a bad thing. Conflict being a thing that's going to help you move the needle, that's going to help you really recondition, that it's going to help you be innovative, consider more input, consider more thought. And so, yes, we have to have a lot of difficult conversations, but not difficult in a way that's challenging, but have you considered? Maybe you should think. Have you thought about, sort of kind of thing? And so really from that perspective, I do a keynote for some professional organizations, and it's titled "Let's Talk: Recalibrating Difficult Dialogue." And most of that is around some of the things as organization and as leaders in organizations, we've been conditioned to think that where we are in 2024, if we want to keep good people, retain good people, build and grow good people, have them really connected to us and loyal to what they're doing, their job and their organization, is that we got to reconsider some of the things that we're doing. And one of those that I often say is around attendance. I hear a lot, Georgia's heavily manufacturing. People expect you to be at the job when you need to be at the job. And that's true. If you're not here, you can't do the work. But what I often say and encourage and have discussion around with leaders is, are you willing to have that stellar employee outside of attendance, they're stellar, is to walk and lose him or her based on being, they're supposed to be here at 8, they get here at 8:03. Maybe we need to do some coaching, maybe we need to do some development as opposed to having an attendance policy and 8:03, you weren't here, that's a check, and you do it 2 more times, you're gone. Maybe that's a conversation. Maybe, and so oftentimes we need to have more dialogue around the way we are managing people and managing the workplace, and that is long-term, big picture, really creating a space where people feel valued, they feel they have autonomy, they have, input on what they're doing, how they're doing, and certainly meeting the expectation, right? And so oftentimes there's a conversation, essentially is what I'm saying. There should be a conversation.
Some people would say, don't sweat the small stuff. 3 minutes, that may, in the scheme of things.
Are they getting the job done?
Right.
And so, and so that's just one that I find having a lot of conversation is having managers rethink, and not necessarily just on attendance, but for instance, a person wants to take off and you have a project that's due, that it's not their project, but they're the more skilled, staff, team member on the team. And you as the frontline manager would say, no, you can't take vacation for something that's super important, that this is important for that particular employee. Is there a class reunion? Is there, maybe a funeral or a baby shower? And now they can't take off because they have this project. As opposed to you saying, no, manager, how about going to that particular employee and it being a conversation is, I really need you here, but I know you need to be away. How can you allow the employee to come up with some ideas? Because if they feel important about their work, and most employees do, they value what they do, allow them to help you. Help me help you. Help me as the employer do what we need to do, because the job still has to go on when you're out. Help you be able to go and, be on vacation or be on leave how you need to be. So being a little more conversation, or having a little more dialogue, creating spaces to even have those difficult dialogues, even with staff.
Do you coach employers and believe in exit interviews?
Yes. The exit interview is for you, employer.
Really?
It's not for that person leaving. They're leaving your company. It's for you. It's where you're going to get more information about how well you're performing as an employer. Creating opportunity for you. What are some of the opportunities we could grow? It's not, we think about it and we think it's going to be a space where they're all talking about their grievances and their headaches and what they didn't like about the company and why they're leaving the company. That might be well and true, but even in that, we can glean and gain something from a conversation. You should be doing exit interviews and even stay interviews. How about doing a stay interview?
What's a stay interview?
A stay interview is an employee that's already with your company. They have no inkling or desire to leave the company, but you are meeting with that employee. What do you like about Brownstone Mediation Services? Why you stay here with me? Why do you work here? What brings you value? Why do you stay? Stay interview. Skip level interviews. Maybe you have 2 levels of management. You have a frontline leader. One of my clients, they don't like to call their supervisors. They like to call them leads. You might have a lead and you might have a director. Employees, your frontline staff can meet with the leads. They meet with them regularly, right? Because that's their frontline manager, their frontline supervisor. But occasionally, it's a great idea to have them meet with the director. One, they know who their senior leader is, because oftentimes you have employees in organizations, they don't even know who they work for. They don't know the big boss, or,
right.
And, some don't like to call bosses. They like to be called, team, that's my team or team members. But it's important for people to know who's in the organization, who they report into. And so even having skip interviews, stay interviews, and these things take time, they take energy. And so certainly it has to be thoughtful in how you do it. But I definitely think you should be doing exit interviews, and you should consider possibly doing skip interviews and stay interviews.
Well, TeKay can help with all of that, design that. So don't worry if you have a thin skin. We'll walk you through it. And on the other side of the break, the 10th mistake that we make, it's all related to taking care of our employees and recognition. Don't want to miss it. Please stick around.
You're listening to Work It Out with TeKay Brown Taylor from Brownstone Mediation Services. Family, business, your workplace. What is conflict costing you? Visit brownstonemediation.com to see how you can find a resolution and maybe even a reconciliation of a broken relationship. That's brownstonemediation.com.
TeKay, when I was an employee, my love language was attaboy. That's all I wanted. I didn't want a gift card or a employee of the month, just an attaboy. And it's so simple. But we've all worked for bosses that maybe aren't comfortable with that. How do you get a boss comfortable in communicating that they feel somebody's doing a good job?
Well, they have to see the importance in doing so. And part of seeing the importance doing so is being able to show them the result of giving Neil his attaboy. You get more out of Neil when you give him his attaboy. And so that's the angle that we come to the managers who have the hesitancy or reservation or just not the comfort in being able to do it in ways that are effective. It's showing them the importance of it and showing them the results, the outcomes of it attached to it.
Yeah, and it's listed as a mistake. So what is the result of that mistake, of not learning how to manage that way?
Well, we just talked about retention. Employees want to be recognized for what they do. They want to know that they're valued. And so when employees are not valued, then they don't stay. They go where they value. I mean, that's a reasonable expectation, right? And so that's a result of it. You know, productivity, retention, just the culture, people being happy and satisfied in the job. We want happy people. We want happy employees because happy employees are more productive employees. And so there's so many reasons why we talk about employee recognition because it's attached to so much inside of your place, your workplace.
Have you seen any positive examples of employee recognition? Anything that sort of caught your eye over the years that you thought, wow, that's really good?
Well, I see it. I was getting ready to say something that happened just last week, but it's not necessarily a wow, but it's wow in the sense of who it was, meaning an employee who is more in the IT, the comm space, who are usually solo employees, meaning individual contributors who work alone. And oftentimes, and I'm going to generalize here, oftentimes those individuals don't really have that relational, that's not their strength because they're individual contributors. They're, they aren't as interdependent on other parts of the organization, if you will. And there was this one particular employee who, as he's working throughout the client, I just, observed that his relational skills were just on par. Even I observed him having a really challenging conversation with a senior leader, meaning he was responsible for going around and updating every employees and staff members in the organization's laptop, the software. And this one particular leader just needed certain systems, needed certain programs, all these different things, was just so, afraid of losing his old content on his laptop. And you could just hear him just really just cautious about this particular employee, the work that he needed to get done. And he was just so patient and so gentle in offering ideas and reassuring this particular leader that he was there for him. He was there not to take, anything from him, and that there were other ways that he could manage around what he needed to do to ensure that he was comfortable and satisfied and didn't have any fears of losing any of his content. And he handled it so well, and being able to go to the leader to say, this is an opportunity to recognize this particular employee on a skill that is not the strongest
what would you advise to that employer to do for the employee that went above and beyond? It sounds like there's an opportunity there.
It is. And it goes back to what you said. You preferred an attaboy. It's so important to get to know who the people work for you. And so, and that's so funny that you say that, because when that employee was recognized, one of the things that he said, is that I've been, I just do this. I've been doing it for so long. And with this organization and other prior organizations, that my first organization, the type of organization that he was with, he was required to field he dealt with leaders who were very difficult. And so he was prepared, and, here 10 years later, to be able to have, and I'm new to him, so I didn't know his history with, being in the industry so long. But me knowing and observing that that's typically not the strength of those. And so he said, but believe, I am not a nice person. He jokingly said, I'm not, that's not my personality. So he said that wasn't his personality. Like, when he got the recognition, he acknowledged personally, that's not who I am. And so even with that, it signals that for this individual, you have to be very thoughtful in how you recognize, and for it to be meaningful and to have the impact that you need, or the continuation for him to continue rising beyond the standard, if that makes sense.
It does. Have you observed specific employee recognition programs through the years?
Yeah, and it's from small to big. From small to big, writing simple thank you notes.
Okay.
I am a believer in just cards. I collect boxes of cards. There was a time when I worked in corporate that, and certainly as a leader, when you do things, it influences and give others ideas to do similar or greater, grandier things. And so even as a leader, when I was in HR, I wouldn't do all the senior leaders, but all of my frontline managers, and especially when I worked in corporate, it easily could be 50 or 60. And I would personally sit down and write a card to each and every one of those leaders. And so it was very personal. Of course, that's just one idea. Of course, you could do a number of things. You don't have to write personal notes. Just the thought of just giving a card of acknowledgement, or just randomly, you did this, and letting them know that you observed it, right? Just a personal note. Or one-on-one. One-on-ones are impactful. Meeting with those, and it don't have to be a formal feedback. It don't have to be a formal review. It could be just checking in, talking about some of those personal things, get to know you, sort of kind of things. One of the other things that I brought to an organization was, we call it 3 slides. And it's an opportunity to allow the rest of the team or rest of the organization to get to know that employee better. Who you are, where'd you grew up, and what do you see yourself in a year, or 5 years, or 10 years? And so they get to talk about, and they only can use pictures. You get 3 slides, you come up with your own slides, you put everything on, whatever you want on there, and it is only pictures. And it tells the story, and you have to tell the story about what the pictures, or who are in the pictures of. And so it's a way to get creative. Acknowledging someone's culture, acknowledging someone's birthday, outside events, team building events, being extravagant, having a whole retreat. There's so many ways that you could do, from big to small, that you can recognize individuals. But the key is, I love how you started off with what's important to you. Because right. I've had people say, I don't celebrate birthdays. I don't acknowledge my birthday. And so
some people go to Disney World for their birthday.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
And some people go or celebrate their birthday for 30 days. I'm one of them. So I celebrate all month. So you just have to find, and that goes back to everything that we've been talking about, is really getting in there and doing the work and being proactive to get to know your people, to see what's important to them and how best to celebrate them.
Well, we've all made mistakes. So if you've made any mistakes with your employees, through the years, TeKay can help, and she'll customize something for you. And it was just fantastic. Top 10 mistakes, because if it weren't for the people, we wouldn't have a business.
That's right.
So it's critical. Thank you so much.
People are your most important asset.
That's right. And people leave
People.
people. Keep that in
You
mind.
got it.
All right. Till next time.
You've been listening to Work It Out with TeKay Brown Taylor from Brownstone Mediation Services. She's an HR powerhouse and certified mediator in the CSRA, specializing in conflict resolution with family, business, workplace issues, and small claims disputes. Remember, save time, save money. Don't rush to litigate, mediate. Visit brownstonemediation.com.